two people called me to a meeting and they said, you're a hot shot doing this computer stuff and so forth and so on. Tell us what you think about these pieces of equipment. And I saw equipment. I have no idea how they manufactured it.
Wow.
Things were assembled at the atomic level. They had single atom gates in an integrated circuit. But I says, I know these are not human. And so the organization happens at the top, and a handful of people kind of know everything. But this is extremely inefficient. I have been in waived, unacknowledged special access programs, so I speak from experience.
So you said you've become an experiencer. What has that entailed exactly? After
the Bledsoe incident and so forth, and I began seeing craft in the sky and little cheap cameras all the time. Not the biggest one, but the penultimate event was several foot tall entity walked across my backyard and stood in front of me, and I took a picture of it. And then after that, the floodgate opened.
Tell me about your experience with remote viewing.
Now, you hit 100% of something there's no way you could possibly know, and you understand you're getting information from somewhere other than your own personal observations and the direct conduit of the universe through your senses. We do not understand reality.
Welcome, Bob. I don't think I know anyone who has a background in three-letter agencies, deep expertise in mathematics and nuts and bolts and computer science, and is interested in remote viewing, the philosophy of consciousness, is personally trying to work on Don Hoffman's theories. So man, friends with Chris Bledsoe, there is just a panoply, a absolute spoil. I'm spoiled for choice here on where to even go in this conversation. So I'm very excited, my friend.
I'm very happy to be here. It was a nice meeting at Contact in the Desert. I felt this kind of connection between us personally, and I think, we have shared interests. And me from a technical point of view, more than a perceptual point of view, and you perceptual intuitive point of view. But my intuitive abilities are increasing with my associations with people like Angela Ford and Bertie Jaworski and people like that. And Simeon Hine was my first remote view teacher. So I'm kind of a crossover hybrid all over the place.
I love that. And I think you need that multi-dimensional kind of curiosity and approach to even come close to understanding these big questions, especially about things like consciousness or the phenomenon, whatever it is. Clearly, there is no one discipline that's going to explain it or even scratch the surface. But before we get into this, let's give people an idea of who you are, what your background is, because it's incredible, man. All of these different agencies you've worked for and stuff you've worked on, even though I know a lot of it you still can't talk about.
Okay, so I was born in Lebanon, Tennessee, grew up in Southwest Alabama, realized at about 10 years old that I was going to be a tech geek all my life. And though I wound up going to Auburn University, which was big tech school in my home state, and I got degrees in applied mathematics and electrical engineering, but I took a lot of physics and other courses. So one of the mathematics courses I took was differential geometry from all the Michael Spivak books. This gave me a firm grounding because I was determined to be able to read through John Wheeler's Gravitation book with Kip Thorne and Charles Meissner. I was determined to do that, and I have a great synchronicity to tell you about in a minute. Then I also took quantum mechanics from an impoverished mind, and I kept correcting his mathematics in the class, and he despised me. So he told me not to come back. And so he wanted to work with the person who was guiding my senior thesis. So the physics professor came over and said to this person who I won't name, I want you to help me with this problem. You're an interesting mathematician, and I need help. And this person said, well, there's a necessary condition. The necessary condition is you persecuted a student of mine, and you're going to remove the persecution. You're going to make it like that quantum mechanics course never existed, because he had given me an F after he threw me out.
Wow.
Okay,
Wow.
so he went off and he did it, and he came back and says, "Okay, the course no longer exists." It's as if he didn't take it. I said, and the professor said, "Well, can you undo that?" He says, "No, it's gone." He says, "Well, one of the things you're going to learn from working with a mathematician is the difference between a necessary and a sufficient condition. Get the F out of my office and don't ever come back."
Wow. Wow. Well, that's
But
crazy.
but I went to graduate school after that at Brown University, and I got a PhD in applied mathematics with minor concentrations in computer science and physics. The computer science was an analysis of algorithms and important computational algorithms. And my teachers were Robert Sedgwick and Donald Knuth.
Mm. Wow.
I took I took sorting and searching and all that those algorithms, computational complexity from Knuth, who was visiting for a semester with his graduate student, who was Robert Sedgwick, who was the first person to successfully analyze quicksort for his PhD thesis.
Mm.
So I just had a terrific education. But the person who taught me quantum field theory was Leon Cooper, who is the a Nobel laureate, who, while at Auburn, did BCS, where C is Cooper pairs, which explains superconductivity. So he
Mm.
got a Nobel Prize for the first theoretical explanations for conductivity, superconductivity, with two others. So I just had this excellent education.
Wow.
And so I did nonlinear filtering. There's a stochastic process that's of widespread use. And I wound up at the Institute for Defense Analyses, Center for Communication Research in Princeton, New Jersey, where I worked with a lot of very famous physicists, mathematicians, computer scientists as a cadre of permanent employees at this facility to interact with them to get them to work on the nation's hard problems for the intelligence community and the DoD.
Mm.
So the synchronicities and serendipities that happened. My ex-wife was a nurse at a retirement community in nearby Hightstown, New Jersey, while I was working in Princeton. And she saw all these books on my shelf and says, I think the author of those books lives over in one of our homes in the retirement community.
Wow.
And I says, okay, well, why don't you take my books over and see if you can get him to autograph them for me? Because I'm a big fan. So she took them over, and he noticed that my all the pages were dog-eared, notes were written in the columns, and rather than being upset that I had marked all over his book, he told her to have me come over and visit. So I went over and visited John Archibald Wheeler in his home in the
Wow.
retirement village, and I became a regular companion for 15 years.
Wow. If people, I think a lot of people might have some inkling of how significant that is and how important John Wheeler is to
Well, just let me.
physics.
I'll
But
give you a quick
yeah,
answer.
yeah,
He directed Richard Feynman's PhD,
yeah.
who gave us quantum electrodynamics. He directed Kip Thorne's PhD, who gave us LIGO. I
Hmm.
mean, he directed another student's PhD that gave us the multiverse. He directed another student's PhD who coined the term qubit. I
Wow.
mean, this guy's impact on 20th century physics. And then he did the quantum erasure experiment, which proves to my mind retrocausality is real. And you got to remember, in
Mm.
Feynman diagrams, the way they're used is things that move to the right are going forwards in time. Things that move to the left are going backwards in time. So electrons are the same object moving forward in time as the positrons are the same object moving backward in time.
Wow.
And so, and we observe time in only one direction. So we perceive that as
Mhm.
one is positive and one is negative. But
Yeah.
retrocausality, qubits, uh, black hole stuff, especially from his gravitation work,
Yeah.
and quantum electrodynamics are all children of John Wheeler's PhD students.
Right,
It's just
right.
so he is as significant as anyone in
For
20th
sure.
century physics
And
that did not win a Nobel Prize.
no, that's crazy. Yeah, and even we mentioned Don Hoffman earlier. He's one of the people who Don cites often, and I think that's because he openly was one of the few physicists who is willing to say things that are very parallel to what Don is saying about physical reality not being the true reality, and there needs
Oh
to
no,
be
no,
some kind of underlying.
he said it from bit to
Yes,
me a
right.
hundred times.
Right. Yeah. And in that same paper, he says something like, uh, you know, that essentially everything we see in the physical world is downstream of some unseen field of information, or I don't remember the exact wording, but something akin to that. And I don't know if he personally ever went into consciousness itself, but Don has sort of parlayed that into his own theory. This idea that there's this hidden, more ontologically superior layer of reality that is grounded in
He
consciousness. Yeah.
absolutely, I can tell you from personal experience, believes that. He
Hmm.
couched it in terms that would not get into trouble with his colleagues. But he and Wigner and a bunch of others and Schrodinger and lots of them believe. And so um, why am I having a problem?
Oh,
Planck. Planck.
hmm.
Planck, all of them believed that consciousness was fundamental. Every single one of them,
Wow.
especially after the collapse of the wave function and those kinds of things. They
Yeah.
just they knew that consciousness was fundamental because if you observe a thing, you collapse the wave function. That means somehow you are participatory in the universe that you are observing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
many, many, many different philosophies are out there for how this can be. And most of the physicists that are doing theory, they don't want to talk about philosophy. They want to say, shut up and compute.
Right, right, right.
Wheeler
Yeah.
was not a shut up and compute guy.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I get the necessity of shut up and compute if you're trying to get things done and you're not trying to get deep into the philosophical questions behind why things are the way they are. But that I was going to say that's the only thing I'm interested in. That's not true because I am interested in technology, but I'm by far more interested in the latter, in the philosophical
Well,
questions.
let me say this.
Yeah.
Here we are using technology.
Right, exactly.
One picture over here, one picture over here, computer right here. None of it would exist if quantum electrodynamics was not a governing principle.
Hmm.
There's the
Right.
integrated circuits, the photons coming off. All of that is described by quantum electrodynamics.
And it's still, and I would still venture a guess based on I don't know you that well, but I know you well enough to know two things. One, you actually understand how all of this technological stuff is taking place to a much deeper level than almost anyone, maybe anyone else I've ever talked to. But yet I still think there's something within it that even you probably find magical. Like the fact that we even live in a reality that has these conditions, that has these laws or these features that we can some like the fact that reality is intelligible, right? That it makes sense, that we can manipulate it, that we can penetrate deeper into it, or at least uncover things that allow us to do these kinds of things is so miraculous, really.
May I give you an anecdote?
Please.
Was taking a remote viewing class and participating in one with Angela Ford. So she and Amris, her partner, showing the class targets.
Hmm.
So we took a 10-minute recess because she does flash review viewing. 10 minutes, give me the answer,
Mm,
and she does it over and over and over until your neuroplasticity develops a way to do it
wow.
over and over and over. Constant feedback. Let your neuroplasticity adopt. So I was 4 or 5 classes in, and I got kept getting these flashes. And the flashes were I saw red, I saw yellow, I saw a pyramid, I saw a jungle, I felt wet, I saw gray stuff, rocky stuff. So my final guess was a pyramidal shaped building in a jungle environment, and somehow there's red and yellow all over the place, and most of the structures are made out of stone. So they did the reveal, and it was something like a monastery or something in granite,
Mm,
and it was at the foot of a mountain. And at the foot of the mountain was all jungle, and they had red and yellow banners everywhere.
hmm.
Now, you hit 100% of something there's no way you could possibly know, and you understand you're getting information from somewhere other than your own personal
Right.
observations and the direct conduit of the universe through your senses. We do not understand reality.
Yeah. That's for sure. Yeah, and it seems like, I think we should get more deep into the psi remote viewing stuff a little later. But one thing that I have noticed from talking to some of the Stargate remote viewers, talking to other scientists who work in parapsychology, is that there really is no agreement. Like there really no one knows like how this stuff occurs, but it seems like there is way too many anecdotes, way too many pieces of data to say that there isn't a there there. But that
Can
elusive
I
that
just
that that mechanism seems
let
elusive.
me
Yeah,
interject?
of course.
We don't need any more science to show it's real. Dean Radin has 100 peer-reviewed papers that
Yeah.
show we don't understand reality as a physical materialist thing. The philosophy is wrong. We need to expand our aperture. And Radin, so far as I'm concerned, has with his peers and partners proven the point.
Mhm. Let's go back to your story though. Where so you get your PhD in mathematics. You have this deep kind of technical genius. It seems very clear. How does that become leveraged into the um, three-letter agencies, stuff like that, as far as you can talk about it?
Okay, so I did technical collection of things produced by our adversaries, used by our adversaries, etc.
Hmm.
And it was, what are they saying? What are they thinking? And another view of it was, what are they doing right now that could harm our people in the field?
Hmm.
So, in the first part of my career, it was, what are they doing? What are they thinking? In the latter part of my career, it was all about, I don't want 18-year-olds we send into the field die. So I began doing my work at the pointy edge of the sword, which I did for a decade before I
Hmm.
retired.
Hmm. So
And I
you're
retired.
probably
There were two retirements. I retired from the field in 2002, but at which time George Tenet, who was director of the CIA, awarded me with the Intelligence Community SEAL Medallion, which is the highest award I could have received. And then I went into software defined radio and cognitive radio and algorithms to do software defined radio that are applicable to collection activities by the government, whether it
mm,
be military collection, CIA collection, NSA collection, NGA collection. It didn't matter who was doing the collection. NRO, through all of its resources at their disposal, I was doing collection, uh, uh, technical collection from then until I retired from the community. Then I went to Virginia Tech at the request of Ted Hume, who was science and technology of the CIA. And basically, he grabbed Charles Clancy and myself and drug us to Blacksburg for Virginia Tech. And while there, this technical collection stuff continued in my head. I had downloads, which gave me the
mm,
ideas that are in my patents for Hawkeye 360.
mm,
And Hawkeye 360 is a geospatial intelligence asset doing geolocations of RF signals on the ground and data analytics, aided by all sorts of databases, et cetera, to fuse the collection with these data analytics into technical reports that are passed up the chain to the intelligence community customers who need it.
yeah. So you were probably doing local level. packet capturing, on communications, decoding those, like, probably at
I
the protocol
certainly
level
did that in a
things.
while, but Hawkeye
Yeah.
is restricted to geolocation only. There are
Mhm.
too many countries with which we have agreements that we will not snoop on them looking for their information from orbit.
Yeah.
So I strictly do RF pictures,
Mm.
and
Gotcha.
what dots on the map are interesting.
Mhm. Mhm. But
And
theoretically, probably a lot more information could be gleaned from
it
that
could, but
kind of
it's not
thing.
allowed.
Right. Right.
It's not. So when you fly over another country, they don't want you listening to their
Sure.
signals, and
Yes, of
so we
course.
have agreements, and we might do it with our adversaries, but Hawkeye chose to stay in the geospatial intelligence with geolocation only
Mhm.
for the time being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe they'll do other things in the future, and now that they have a lot of capital, they're going to be asked to do lots of different things. My guess is it'll be $100 billion company in under 10 years.
Wow. Incredible. Incredible. So you're involved on this very technical level, but where do you start to get inklings of the weird stuff?
Okay,
Inklings
so
and yeah, go ahead.
yeah, when I was on the inside, I heard inklings all the time. I saw pictures, photos, etc., of UFOs and other things, which I was shown at somebody's terminal when they weren't supposed to show it to me.
Mm,
Okay, so I grew curious and I saw that Richard Dolan had written books called UFOs in the National Security State, Volume
yeah.
1 and 2. And I was in the National Security State. So that was a natural place for me to go. So I started interacting with them, and I wound up being the moderator and administrator of the Richard Dolan Forum. Just did a minor technical job for access to all that went on there. And one of the things he did was he did 4 1 hour interviews with Christopher Bledsoe.
Mhm.
So once the interviews with Christopher Bledsoe were there, and I knew about Grant Cameron's interaction with Chris Bledsoe, I went, I have got to go visit Chris Bledsoe. So I asked him, could I come? I says, I'm a scientist. Maybe I can help you gather scientific data that will help you make your case. So it took him about 3 weeks to let me come over. And he said, no, it's too close to Christmas. Come after Christmas, come in January. So in January of 2020, after contacting him in 2019, after he'd been on Dolan for multiple episodes, he called me and said, Bob, it's okay for you to come after New Year's, and we'll hang out. So we hung out for 4 days. 3 days of rain were spent him telling me every little detail, every little secret, every little thing that happened to him, including all about the river Fear River event and all the other
Yeah.
weird things that have happened since then. And on the last night, he says, I think it's going to be clear, and I think we're going to have activity. So it was clear. We were sitting inside where it was January, so it was cold. We were sitting inside, and you could tell he was getting something. He says, we can go outside now. They're here. So we went outside and in his yard, and all of a sudden, about 1,000 to 1,500 meters away, a gigantic ball of plasma or whatever it is came into existence, just flashed into existence, and then started moving around and hovering, flew right over the trees. And from the height of my perception of the height above the trees and the height of the trees themselves, I measured that it was approximately 40 feet in diameter. So it was pretty big,
Yeah.
and it meandered around, and then it slowly faded away long before it got to the horizon. It just faded out. And I went, wow. He says, man, that's the biggest one I've seen here with anyone except by myself.
Mm.
He says, wow, that was big. I said, yeah, no kidding. And then I began noticing. So Chris had his rheumatoid arthritis then. His neck
Mhm.
was stiff and he couldn't look up. Couldn't do that at all.
Yeah.
Okay. So I began noticing in the trees there were things that were like flash bulbs. And They were, you could see them clearly, but they were popping like flash bulbs, lighting up. And we're January, so it's not fireflies. So I says, man, to myself, I says, man, I really do wish these things would come up out of the trees so I could see them. They almost instantly jumped out of the trees and went right up into the sky, and I could see them flashing.
Wow.
To me, that was ironclad proof they were reading my mind. Okay, so then that went on for a while and stopped. And then another great big orb came after Ryan Bledsoe came out of the house. And he has a video. It's kind of a rough video, but he has a video of that orb with the three of us standing there on his personal YouTube channel. Not Ryan's Bledsoe Said So, but on his personal YouTube channel. That video is up and people can go look at it and
Okay.
hear the three of us and our excitement as he gets a usable but not great video of this orb because it was through pine trees. Anyway,
Man.
so he ran back inside to tell his mom how he'd seen a gigantic orb bigger than anyone he had ever seen. And Chris and I stood out there, and I noticed that right above the trees, there was looked like the surface of a pond rippling across above the trees in the sky, but it was like purple mist and purple
Mhm.
haze. And I was not taking purple haze, so it was not a hallucination. Okay, so anyway, um, and it did its wavering thing, and I went, Chris, is there something purpley, vaporish, water-looking stuff up above? He says that happens here on occasion. He
Hmm.
says, yeah, that's great. You're one of the few people that have seen that. And I was always looking up. Remember, he can't look up because of his neck. He says I was looking up. It vanished. And less than a couple of seconds later, Chris says, okay, they're gone for the night. We can go inside. There was no way he could have seen the purple haze. He just felt them leave,
Hmm.
or they told him they were leaving. So I had all I needed as a scientist, all the data I needed as a scientist to infer. He has non physical communications between his consciousness and whatever those consciousness were. And that just totally changed my life.
Wow.
That was
Yeah.
that was thing one. Thing two, the hitchhiker followed me home.
Friends, I have been cooking up the goods over in the members section on YouTube and at patreon.com/third eye drops. What are said goods, and was cooking really the best verb you could summon on this occasion? Well, to the former question, said goods are weekly, at least roughly, exclusive content that you are never going to see here on the main feed, with some of your favorite guests, by the way. Case in point, I am slowly working on a doc that I shot at Contact in the Desert this year with a number of your favorite beings on the topic of UFOs and consciousness, and I will be releasing the full unedited conversations with all of those people only on the members channel and on Patreon. If you do join up over at patreon.com/third eye drops, you will get access to all of those exclusive videos, plus a patron only Discord and occasional live hangs and more. And yes, of course, the doc will be coming out on the main feed if I didn't make that clear. So much love for watching, my friends. While I have you, tickle that algorithm, like, subscribe, review if you are listening on Spotify. Wow.
That was
Yeah.
that was thing one. Thing two, the hitchhiker followed me home. So apparently, it's a regular thing that a hitchhiker follows you home from Chris's. So I had interesting things in the skies around my home in South Alabama and Gulf Shores. But then an interesting incident occurred. My ex-wife and I were in our home, and we began to be squirted with what's like a invisible water pistol in the air.
In your
Squirted,
house?
squirted her inside the house. I
Whoa.
looked for leaks. I looked for roof damage. No, it hadn't rained in 9 days, and it was just weird. And so I says, "Do you see this water on me?" I see drops on you and on the bed where you're sitting. And so I went back to reading, and I heard squeal in the other end of the house and went down there, and she says, "It squirted me. Look, see, the drops of water are on the floor." So I went, wow. So I called Chris up and told him that it was really getting exciting down there where we were, that we were experiencing all sorts of stuff, but the water incident was the biggest. And I says, Chris, look, I know that I've been debating whether or not to help you in some way publicly, but I'm going to help you the following way. I'm going to work with your friend Lori Wagner, and we're going to take the collection of evidence you have and photographs, etc., and we're going to make a PowerPoint presentation for you to give as your first public presentation of the actual evidence at UFO Con 2020 in San Francisco. So I went, Chris went, his wife went, so forth. And it was a big success. It was just great. So at the end of while we were there, people were in our hotel who we now know had contracted COVID
Mhm.
from overseas, and they brought it back. Now, the two of us didn't seem to get COVID, but the head of that UFO Con 2020, Lori Fenton, she had her head covered in a blanket, sitting on the back wall the entire time. I believe she had COVID. I thought
Mhm.
I didn't do the diagnosis, but it
Yeah.
sure seemed like the coughing and other stuff. She had COVID, so
Yeah,
went
those
home.
conferences will get you, man. I got a little sick after Contact in the Desert this year, actually.
Okay, so I'm about to come to the end of the story. So
Yes, yes.
we went home, and Virginia Tech announced that it was shutting down immediately, and that we are almost certainly not going to open the school the next year because they'd been told the vaccines would not be ready by then. They knew they had a vaccine, but it had to go through tests.
Mhm.
So they just shut down the university for a year and a half. So they had built a building for me where it hold 200 people, and I was in that blackened halls all by myself.
Wow.
I announced I was retiring at the end of May, and I departed Blacksburg, Virginia, and went back home to Alabama, taking some of the Hawkeye stock and selling it and getting money and bought a home. So before we left town, my ex and I both had to have physicals because both of us had physical infirmities. So we knew we were and comorbidities. So we knew
Mhm.
we were going to have to go into Opelika and hide in our home. So she went to her neurosurgeon and I went to my cardiologist. So she had had a adult onset diabetes, inflammation of her brain that caused a blood vessel to be mashed when the brain swole, and she had a stroke.
Wow.
So she had left sided weakness. I had had uh, 3 heart attacks, and I had a coronary bypass. And so I was going to my cardiologist to see if everything was okay because it might take me a while to find a good cardiologist after I moved there. So I just wanted to be checked out before I left. Same for her. She went first. She went to her neurosurgeon and he did the required brain scans to see if everything was okay where she had had a stroke. And he says, I don't know what to tell you. And she said, what do you mean? He said, this is the last time I'll ever be able to see you because after this scan, no insurance company would pay for me to do this expensive scan because there's absolutely zero evidence that you have ever had a stroke. The malformation which caused the stroke is no longer there. And she had stopped having left side weakness a couple of months before. So that visit to Chris Bledsoe, she was with me,
Oh,
had caused a cure. And so
whoa.
I went to my cardiologist. He says, "Okay, let's put you on the treadmill, see how you're doing. Just make sure everything's okay." So he put me on the treadmill and he kept me on there a long time. He kept ramping it up and up and up and up and up and up, and it was like pretty brutal. So after like 25 or 30 minutes on that treadmill, he let me off, told me to come into his office. He says, "Okay, what have you been doing?" I says, following the rules, eating right, exercising as much as I can, and trying not to get enough plaque in my arteries to have another heart attack. He says, I don't think you need to worry about that. I says, why? He says, I have had athletes from Virginia Tech come in here, get on that treadmill, and not be able to do what you can do. The EKG we had strapped onto you is perfect for a 35-year-old man. And so I went, what are you telling me? He says, you have experienced a miraculous cure. You no longer have any vestige of the heart disease that caused you to have coronary bypasses. I have a scar from here to here with no heart damage inside. None.
Wow.
So both of us received miraculous cures. after visiting with Chris Bledsoe and interacting with whatever it is that visits him.
Well, that's an insane story. I heard you tell that same story on Danny Jones a couple months ago, and I didn't know I don't think you told the part about your ex-wife though, which adds a whole other iteration to that. But then, of course, the downstream question is this phenomenon, these lights, these orbs that seemingly have a connection to consciousness and seem to be able to interact on some unknown layer of your physiology, your mind, your consciousness, your soul, whatever it is. Do you share the Bledsoe's thesis on what this is? That they always talk about it in spiritual terms. What do you, from your sort of multidisciplinary multidisciplinary perspective, think these
Okay,
manifestations
so
are?
I do not have direct telepathic communications with his entities, whatever they are. I have observed them regularly every time I go out with him, especially all these events he holds in Wilmington Beach, Contact in the Desert. I have been with him on all of those events. And we see hundreds of these orbs. And the thing I see is what I felt in myself by all the people that are gathered when these beings show up. It's this immense sense of peace and gratitude. And you're just awestruck by what you're seeing. And the fact, and then the Contact in the Desert, he was regularly pointing at things and say, "Don't look at that. That's a satellite. Don't bother with it." And then he would see stuff moving over and he'd go, "No, that's a jet. Don't bother with that." And he would go, "Okay, that one's real." So his family has now got these devices like phones and other things. They can look
Mhm,
up at the sky with a virtual augmented reality and say, "That's a satellite or that's a this or an airplane." And so he's now warning the crowd not to believe that a thing that looks like it might be an orb is anything but a prosaic explanation. But sees many orbs every time he goes out, and it's kind of amazing. He may occasionally makes a mistake. I was on Wilmington Beach when he thought a thing that had moved across the sky went behind a cloud and all of a sudden came out of the cloud. Was that orb? It
yeah,
was not. It was the planet Jupiter. So I began telling them, look, you got to get these apps and use them so that
yeah,
people won't accuse you of making false claims. And so they
definitely.
have done exactly that. They've done exactly what they need to do. And I'm working on my SCU talk that's coming up is about the collection of sensors that I'm going to build into a box that citizen scientists and others can gather this kind of data with, and passive radar, pan tilt zoom cameras, fisheye cameras, all sorts of other sensors to be fused into a single collection uh,
Mhm,
uh, uh, object whenever one of these weird events happens. So between pressure, gravitational anomaly, magnetic gradiometer, all of this stuff, all fused to a video or a photograph, you can say, well, that looks like a blurry object. But then now you can say, oh, but there's 14 other signals that say it's weird.
yeah,
Okay, so I'm trying to that's the kind of science I'm trying to do. But it has to be collected and stamped as contemporaneous with the event itself. This is a thing that Skywatcher got
yeah,
wrong. They got
interesting.
wrong. They collected all sorts of data. They didn't align them in time and mark them as together, and they couldn't do it after it was over.
Wow,
I'm doing it.
very
That's
interesting.
my SCU talk, and that'll be followed up by an extremely long, difficult technical paper. As those who present at SCU are invited to submit a paper to the SCU journal,
Mm.
and I'm
Well,
doing it.
to fork in the road. I'm dying to ask you about two things on these two threads. One, I would definitely love to talk about Skywatcher, but I'm dying to ask you about plasma, plasma science, some of the more out there ideas having to do with plasma. I'm assuming you've thought about this pretty significantly. Have you read New Science of Heaven by Temple?
No, but I'm a student of Ken Shoulders' EV work with Hal Putoff and
Okay.
others, and I have all of his papers. And then there's these Russians that did all sorts of interesting technical work. Gene
Hmm.
Sisko, father-in-law, was a Soviet scientist or engineer or both on their crash retrieval program. He's written all sorts of interesting papers. I'm at the point now of uh, I believe Belief is not science. I believe that some of these plasmoids are alive. Okay, and the first evidence I ever saw was when the shuttle went up and put up a tethered thing, and the tether got very, very long, and many kilometers, like 25 kilometers long, and then snapped and broke. After it drifted away, they pointed their infrared cameras at the tether because it was the only way they could see it clearly. And these plasmoid things flew all around it.
Hmm.
They were huge. But that to me was, oh, these plasmas, they are alive or conscious. And so that was my first thing I saw that says that thing is alive. That's a living being. And so, and of course, these plasma looking things that fly all over Chris, fly wherever Melinda Leslie has a Skywatch, fly wherever and I'm now a senior advisor to Psionic Asset. So wherever Mike Batista and J2 and those guys go out and observe, they see these plasmas, and to me they're alive. And the other thing that says they're alive is they're responding to the call. And I'm
Yeah.
not talking about dog whistle, I'm talking showing your heart and that you want to see them, and they
Yeah.
come. That says to me these plasmas are alive and responsive.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what you hear, and I'm dying to have one of these experiences myself, by the way. I know the Bledsoes, I know Ryan pretty well, I've met Chris a number of times, and I know many people who have had extremely compelling experiences with them.
Oh,
I
my set of
Right.
experiences are in the hundreds now.
Right. Yeah, I know, and I know some of a couple of the psionic asset guys who work with Skywatcher as well, and, all strike me as very believable people, and, it's I'm just maintaining the intellectual distance until I personally have an undeniable experience myself to just hold multiple possibilities in superposition in my mind until I have an experience. That said, from my other experiences in weird areas, oftentimes having an experience does not yield an explanation. It just leads to more questions and more curiosities.
I
But
want to give you the warning I give everybody.
yeah.
Now, after all my experiences, I can give you a warning. Go with love in your heart. What you project is what you will get. That's number
Mm,
one. Number two, you'll never be the same. Whatever comes is going to follow you home. And after
mm.
that, you're forever open to them.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It depends on you.
Hmm.
Are you going to bring them with love, or are you going to bring them wanting a weapon?
Hmm. So
There's a
so
reason those people at Skinwalker Ranch keep getting slapped around.
hmm. So in some way it seems like whatever it is, it's a reflection of something having to do not just with the consciousness that's reaching out to it, but the state, the subjective state of the
That is my
consciousness.
observational evidence. I cannot prove a single word of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the plasma stuff, there is this whole kind of realm of arcane science that some people put a lot of stock in, some people don't. I like I said, I read New Science of Heaven, but other than that, I don't know the research extremely well. But it seems like it is one of these topics that is, and you can give me your opinion on this, please. Whether rightly or wrongly, is grouped in with all of these sort of taboo border sciences, where people who go down these roads end up having, meeting weird untimely deaths, or they're dismissed as quacks and pseudoscientists. The most famous one is Nuno from MIT just died in a very strange, alarming way. He's getting lumped in with this group of scientists who had untimely deaths or disappearances, who may be phenomenon adjacent or weird science adjacent. But other than your sort of anecdotal opinion about perhaps them being conscious and being able to interact with human consciousness, what else do you think is going on there? Is there a reason that this should be lumped in with this kind of dangerous, taboo, weird science, or do you think a lot of that is overblown?
I think if you bring negatives,
Yeah.
they're gonna welcome you with negativity. That's just what I believe. And it's what I observed. I saw people. that I believe, not that I know a single thing, believe went to Skinwalker Ranch looking for directed energy weapons. They were not treated well.
Hmm. So meaning people like from the government went there with the express purpose of trying to like what does it have to do with directed energy weapons?
Oh, John Alexander was the leader for the Pentagon of non lethal weapons research the last 10
Yeah.
years of his career.
Yeah.
Was he around Skinwalker Ranch? All the time. He
Hmm.
was in the National Institute for Discovery Science and one of the leaders of it for Bigelow. And Bigelow owned Skinwalker Ranch. Lots of people who went to Skinwalker for the military or looking for weapons or whatever have had very bad experiences.
Hmm.
Like some of those that are writing books that are coming out now have all sorts of bad things happen to them in their home, and that will be detailed into their upcoming major book release.
Hmm. So
Don't go there looking for a weapon.
yeah, I mean, I it wouldn't have even occurred to me honestly, but I guess with if you're in the military, maybe that's your sort of backdrop psychology. But yeah, for people that don't know John Alexander, he's long been tied to a lot of spooky programs, sci stuff, Project Stargate. Um, you know,
I
this
can't. Let me drop one in here
yeah.
for you. I'm co-authoring Angela Ford's biography.
Mhm.
She and I have regular meetings, and we're putting together the entire story. I'm interviewing and so forth. And she despises coordinate remote viewing,
Mm,
despises it.
mhm.
Because and who brought it in? General Stubblebine and Lieutenant Colonel John Alexander. The remote viewers like her and Joe McMoneagle and those people who were there early, they just open up and let it flow. What they get any way they get it. And they write it down and they turn it in. And hey, they had big time reports. Joe McMoneagle did not do coordinate remote viewing tasking to find the submarine that everybody denied could even exist until it later came out and was observed.
Yeah.
He just lays in a chamber at what is now Monroe Institute and closes off and puts on the headphones, gets quiet, and does his thing. He does not do coordinate remote viewing. He just lets whatever it is flow.
Yeah.
Everybody should read his autobiography so you will understand the relationship between trauma and these abilities, because the first 18 years of his life was all about trauma. And when he went into the military, it was quickly recognized that anyone who went out on reconnaissance with him came back without a single person getting injured. It was very quick that they discovered his abilities, and
Yeah.
he was sent off and with one of the founding members of the remote viewing group that was there. And they did not call themselves remote viewers. Ingo Swan, who was on contract through Powell Putoff and Russell Targ with the government, chose when Stubblebine and Alexander came in and took over. He was tasked with writing, constructing an
Yeah.
educational program, etc. And he invented coordinated remote viewing. And people might like Ingo, but they don't like what he did to them. And a
Mhm.
lot of them retired, a lot of them hated it, and they just hid what they did their own way. Angela was one of those
Yeah.
that lasted all the way to the 90s with Big Monocle, and she never did coordinate remote viewing, even though that's what they tasked her to do.
Mhm. Yeah,
She
it
just
seems
she
like
did automatic writing, mostly
yeah.
automatic writing.
It seems like there's a big divide among the remote viewers. So to just kind of fill in a few gaps for people, I think most people uh, who are fans of the channel know that generally know this Project Stargate story, how it started in the 70s at SRI with Hal Puthoff and Russell Targ. There were a couple key figures in the beginning. Ingo Swann is one. Pat Price is probably the other major one, and these are kind
And
of the two guys who,
Uri Geller.
yeah,
No,
that,
no, he was big.
but in the remote viewing though, because it seems
He
like
no, he came there. He did all sorts of experiments, which
yes,
shows non-local
hmm
telekinetic consciousness.
yeah, he seems very controversial for some of those guys. Like some of the remote viewers don't like him being lumped in with what they were doing. It seems to me, at
Well, he
least.
does it for different reasons.
Yeah.
And he does it sometimes for this or that reason, but he also works for his own the government he owes allegiance to,
Right.
which is the Israeli government. I mean, you got to understand there's all sorts of reasons for distrusting him that are conflated into, oh, you don't want to believe anything he says about remote viewing.
Yeah,
That's
and it's
wrong.
and it's also tricky when you have someone who is a stage magician and they're doing stage magician type stuff, but they're also doing what looks like it could be real psychokinetic stuff and telekinetic stuff and mind reading stuff. And it's really like I'm good friends with Chris Ramsey, and he, knowing Chris Ramsey is a very skilled stage magician. So when you bring up, Uri Geller to him, he's immediately just like, no, this guy's a stage magician. Like I know
He
that
is,
craft.
but
I don't trust it.
that's not the only thing he does.
Right. Yeah. And then that leaves people like me, like, I'm not sure. I read Phenomenon by Annie Jacobson, which I thought was like phenomenally, no pun intended, well researched. And she gives him a very fair shake in the book and leaves a lot of questions open as to whether or not there really are some abilities there. But um, to get to this, what we're talking about here with coordinate remote viewing, they eventually hit this point where the program leaves SRI, goes to Fort Meade under the auspices
Of the
of
army.
what's that?
That's the army.
Yes, under the army. Yep, yep. And then that's where people like McMonigal and then and then a lot of these other like next wave of remote viewers come involved. And it seems like there's this big push to standardize the process at this point. And that's what you're talking about with not just being in these open intuitive states or whatever, but there needs to be a method. There needs to be a kind of like science, or even if it's not a science, it's a method. It's
In
a
the
hard.
military,
Yeah.
everybody that has a job has to go through training,
Hmm.
period. You have to
Right.
get a certification or you can't be in a posting. It's clear why they did it. I hate they had to do it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and Angela Ford was one of these really fascinating figures in this time because she comes in as a psychic, as somebody who already does this stuff in her own way. And at least in Phenomenon, and the stories I've heard her tell, they really at first did not like it, but they were forced to be like, all right, however she's doing it, we don't care because she's got skills and she's getting the information we want. And she kept getting tasked with a lot of the most important
You got to
stuff.
remember, in the
Yeah.
early days, she ran into sexism, sexist treatment. And then it was she was a rebel. And then it was okay, she's good.
Right.
So there was a progression of how she was treated. And in the end, they just let her do her thing unsupervised.
Mhm. Mhm.
But they
So
kept her away from the new people because they did not want her training them.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because she's approaching it from a much more esoteric and, spiritual kind of
Yeah, let me give
perspective.
you
Yeah.
let me give you a concrete example. You go into her remote viewing class. And she says, "How's everybody doing?" Goes around, very polite. She says, "Okay, we got our first target, and I'll be back in 10 minutes. Tell me what you got." That's it. You
Wow.
are left to do it your own way. And
Cool.
I've seen people draw stuff. I've seen uh, automatic writing. I've seen me images just pop in my head and me describe them. It just, you let the individual do it the best way they can.
Yeah. How did you connect with her?
Well, that is an interesting story. So I had a girlfriend who was a psychic. We're no longer together. And she was discovered by this podcaster named Grizzly.
Hmm.
And we went on there and we were trying to find uh, who did murders or where missing children were. And about 2 or 3 episodes in, here's Angelo sitting on the screen, and the woman and I were sitting there on the screen. And I just got to know her through Grizzly. I had no idea who she was until a year or more after she and I both quit Grizzly for personal conflict reasons.
Hmm.
There were people on there who were faking, and I just
Mhm.
couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's generally one of the things that's just so hard in this space in general is like a lot of this stuff seems to be beyond the capture of hard science, and I think hard science has its limitations anyway, as somebody who considers consciousness to be fundamental. And if you consider consciousness to be fundamental, that means consciousness is probably capable of doing things, or experiencing things that we cannot explain with the scientific method
So
through
I'm
material
sorry.
means.
Do you know how physics particles are discovered?
Through the Large Hadron Collider, or
Well, what is the process?
um, slamming electrons together at super high speeds and
And
seeing
so
what happens?
after that, they do statistical analysis of what they see.
Mhm.
When they get a 5 sigma event that meets a certain criteria, they declare they have discovered a particle.
Hmm.
We can do the same thing with these things. We can gather enough events to reach a conclusion that is, by whatever means, statistical in nature, so that when we get to a 5 sigma event, we can declare a discovery. We just have to write down the experimental protocol and follow it.
Yeah. Yeah. And um I'm trying to remember where I was going with this. Oh, where I was going is, with all of that said, the problem is when, to your point, when it's so difficult to just separate signal from noise, because if you go in the wrong direction and believe someone who you shouldn't believe, that can lead you astray for y- days, months, forever, right? And then you can just spend all of your time chasing things that weren't real to begin with. So that's one of the hardest things about this space. Yeah.
I have a point. I do observational science. I collect data. I don't analyze it. Okay. That kind of stuff, I'm not going to analyze the data. I want everybody with their own personal philosophy to look at it. And if I get 1,000 people to look at it, maybe one of them will come up with the right idea.
Mhm.
I am not going to put out interpretations of this data. That's the thing that we have to do is collect the data and make it available to everyone. That is that underlying core principle of the sensor system I'm building.
Yeah.
And if we do that, eventually somebody will have a good hypothesis.
Yeah, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. But is it worth collecting the data of anecdotes that are questionable and putting that into your calculus or your sense making?
Absolutely. Look, eyewitness testimony is data.
Yeah.
You put it in, but at a very low confidence level. When you have better data with more information attached to it,
Yeah.
like not just a little snapshot, but a snapshot with 1,000 other sensors, that's a lot more data. So you give it, you want to capture the information entropy of what you're
Mhm.
gathering. That's how you weight each of the individual things.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Information theory tells you how to do it. When the entropy, the observed entropy of what you're getting is sufficiently large, you'll say, okay, I've got at least 20 bits of information here. And then when you get to thousands of bits of information, you're getting somewhere. When you get to 10,000 bits of information, you've got a discovery.
Yeah, you've got a much higher
Well,
resolution picture.
ten
Yeah.
thousand bits is a sigma of 5.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so this actually leads us to the other fork I wanted to explore with you before, when I said, I want to talk to you about Skywatcher and I want to talk to you about plasmoids. Um, that's one of the reasons, by the way, I was so excited when Barber came out, because he was giving a conduit for people to not have to worry about other people's data, other people's anecdotes, other people's experiences. He was really saying, like, the primary way to interact with this phenomenon is through your own consciousness. So you personally can go have an experience on your own. And then, he told these very compelling stories on Ross Coldhart about what opened his mind to this as a tier one operator and helicopter pilot. And then, for people that don't know, he says that he was flying a mission just like he had hundreds or thousands of times before. Then he suddenly was struck with some sort of psychical contact with some sort of other consciousness that felt feminine, that felt, like his mother, that felt wise and wistful, and all these other things. And it impacted this hard-nosed operator to such a level where he almost couldn't fly his own helicopter. And then he gets to this object, and it is an anomalous octagonal shaped UFO that he then has to pick up and transport somewhere to some defense contractor or something.
As I came over this object for the pick, there was this overwhelming sense of emotion.
Is it your feeling? Are you suddenly having a mental breakdown on the job?
No, I felt like something connected with me. I felt like something had tuned in to me and my soul and was providing me some sense of guidance. Once it was just me and that object in between the pick and the drop site, there was about 20 miles in between, I felt like something was inside of me. I felt like I was possessed by the most beautiful spirit I'd ever been possessed by. And
Was it loving?
it was loving, but there was a sense of sadness at the same time. And
Had you ever had an experience like this before?
no,
But then he goes even further and says, not only is there this psychical component, we have long been using in Black projects these quote unquote psionic assets who call these things in. So there's the exciting part that, hey, okay, human consciousness, your own consciousness can interact with these things. And there's a horrifying part that the military industrial complex knows this and uses it for very questionable reasons. So I know you had some involvement with Skywatcher. I don't know to what level or depth, but how did you? And if I didn't say, Skywatcher is the thing that Jake, in the wake of this interview, ends up starting up, which was supposed to be this public facing version of disclosure where they were going to show that this is real, that you can call these anomalous phenomena in with your mind, and even purportedly get them to maybe land, or maybe provide some kind of unshakable material proof, right? So that was the idea, at least, and I think a lot of people were disappointed or confused by the lack of outcome there. But
Okay, so
yeah,
I'll give you the quickest possible version I can. It was assembled. Psionics and technical people went into the field. Data was gathered. Internally, there were problems.
mhm.
Problems eventually caused an internal splinter. The data became unavailable for analysis. So I was in the part of Skywatcher that was going to be there to do the work on the
Okay.
data after it was available, under the direction of Gary Nolan.
Ah, okay.
Okay. And so Gary sat there and made sure the data was collected as well as it could be collected. But then these internal problems just caused it to kind of fall apart. And so the scientific team never got access to all the data.
Hmm.
I don't even know where it is now.
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had, because there people who were watching this closely. So they were initially releasing these documentary like episodes where there were different kind of topics. One of them
Yeah,
was
but I mean,
all
that's like, ooh boy, I got another video. Where's
yeah,
the
right.
data?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a great point, because I think people are it's just speaking for myself. I don't even have to say other people. I personally am tired of seeing, little blobs, little lights, little things that on instrumentation, by the way, that I don't even know what a normal thing looks like to begin with. And now you're showing me this supposedly anomalous thing, but I don't know what I'm looking at. When you see these, whether it's the Nimitz footage or the stuff that's come out more recently in these tranches of disclosure, it's just, I think people need something more. And I don't even know what that something more is necessarily at this point. But we're so tired of to your point, like another video, another little thing, another that kind of looks like a jellyfish, that kind of looks like a
So
brown. Yeah.
I think if I bring something to the table, it's not only the technical ability to do this technical collection, it's also writing down what the overall process needs to be to take whatever's brought to them and figure out how to include it in some kind of scientific method conclusion. So it doesn't need to be just sensors, it could be all sorts of things. but you put all these things together in the proper order and proper manner, protecting the data, making sure it hasn't been tampered with, all this other stuff. We can get results. For whether it's psionic folks doing stuff, which I'm helping them do stuff now and gathering data with it, and whether it's me tinkering with my cameras and toys and software defined radios and figuring out how to do radar and see whether they're not they're doing emanations while at the same time listening to see if there's airplanes overhead so I can exclude them, or seeing if there's satellites overhead so I can say that's not it, that's the satellite.
Hmm.
All automated. It has to be automated. So all of my work is now going into Logan Lindvall's Phenom. I hope
Hmm.
that turns into a bigger project.
What is that?
Logan Phenom, he was in the UAP task force with Jay Stratton and others,
Okay.
and he was a member of the intelligence community and involved. So he is now trying to gather data in the kind of way I'm trying to gather it so that it's usable. Other people can see where things are happening, hotspots, gather the data. It needs to spread much wider than it is so that people like you don't say, who is that and what is that?
Right.
As
Yeah,
soon as we get
definitely.
past who is that and what is that to something where everybody wants it, then it'll have a big impact because it's being done right.
Yeah, it's really a tricky needle to thread because, you know, uh, the John Q. Public, or even me, let's not even say some hypothetical person, they can't deal with like data overwhelm either. So it's like you could look at data and be like, this is game changing. This is weird. I am 100% confident, but most people aren't going to be able to understand that. They're not going to be able to look at it. So they need something like images, something like videos, but so far at least it's been very difficult to obtain something that's really convincing. And now we
So
have the
I
added
don't think
problem
I don't
just to
think
fit just
I don't think
re-
videos and pictures are necessary. So it's if you can provide multiple way of conveying the information,
yeah.
whether it's a sensor or not, to the individual, whether it's a graph or a movie, animation, animated GIFs, or anything like that. You too can do what was now being done with video, but now it's like time domain look at sensors.
Mhm.
You can see a time domain signal that correlates with a video. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Now you've got twice as much information as you had before. If you had 12 more sensors and six of them have time domain signals that show something weird is going on with whatever that was in the video, now you got something to worth having.
Mhm. 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 Um, on this topic, though, of these psionic assets supposedly being involved from, this this legacy program that may or may not exist, which I would love to hear your thoughts on as well. Did you, in any of your capacities or through any of your connections, come into contact with anything that would suggest that that's real, or that um, these programs that supposedly used psionic assets in the pursuit of contacting, downing UAPs was real? Do you believe, disbelieve, agnostic on that?
Yeah. So I know something about the internal usage of psi abilities inside the government, but I would say my most significant interaction with someone who I am now certain was in the legacy program was Admiral Bobby Ray Inman.
Hmm.
Was the director of NSA, then director of the CIA, and so forth and so on. And he wound up at MCC in Austin, Texas, which
Hmm.
was a consortium of all the big integrated circuit and uh, uh, integrated circuit companies across the United States in an effort to forestall the transfer of manufacturing integrated circuit chips and computers offshore. They wanted to keep it onshore. And so MCC was a consortium of all those that could do that. And it went to Austin, and I worked for Bobby Ray Inman when he was the director of NSA. He knew who I was, and so forth and so on. IDA in Princeton had a close relationship with NSA. So he knew There's only 40 of us at IDA in Princeton. So he knew the work of those 40 people. And so I interact with him. And when he left to go to MCC, he recruited a bunch of my friends to go and work at MCC. I could name two of them, but I won't. But when they came back, they were talking about how horrific the secrecy and isolation was. One lab couldn't talk to another lab, and so forth and so on. And it was not just one company's people couldn't talk to another company's people. It seemed much more pervasive than that. And so this sounds like the sequestration and restrictions on collaboration that the legacy program has made institutional in its operation.
Hmm.
And so I was exposed. I told him I didn't want to do it because I couldn't work in that kind of secrecy, and it just wasn't for me. So then two people called me to a meeting and they said, you know, you're a hot shot doing this computer stuff and so forth and so on. Tell us what you think about these pieces of equipment. And I saw equipment and I saw electron microscope looks at the equipment. And one of them was, I have no idea how they manufactured it.
Wow.
Things were assembled at the atomic level, right down to the atomic level. You could now, hindsight being 2020, I now realize it was some kind of computer thing, but I have no idea how they did it. They had single atom gates
Hmm.
in an integrated circuit. And how do you manipulate single atoms? Well, you don't do it with any technology we know now or are likely to know for tens of thousands of years because we don't have a clue. Then there were other integrated circuit boards that I could detect they were integrated circuit boards, but I had no idea how they were manufactured. I don't know where the chips came from. We can't make those chips, even though I could identify them as chips. I wouldn't know how to make them back then if my life depended on it. So I went, whoever this one over here is way out ahead of us. And whoever did this one is a few hundred years ahead of us. But I says, I know these are not human. So don't bother me. I'm not going into the legacy program. And I left. They never
Mm.
bothered me again.
So, two questions. So, ostensibly, this is it MCC? Is that the company you said?
The MCC was where Inman was. These
Yeah.
two guys did not come from MCC. They
Okay.
came from a place that I now know didn't exist.
Hmm. That's interesting. So ostensibly, MCC was this consortium or company that was working to keep microchips or integrated circuit stuff domestic, but really, you're saying it had this deeper layer. So,
It was doing reverse
yeah.
engineering of integrated circuit
Okay.
boards that led to the computing, precision, navigation, and timing, and so forth that we would need to fly that thing all over the universe.
Hmm. Hmm. So, and for people that haven't heard this name, Bobby Ray Inman, this is somebody who's commonly talked about in the legacy program. He's put at this like majestic 12 level guy, if that's a real thing, meaning like he would have been one of the people who had all the secrets, knew about whatever was going on, was as you would call it, a super user probably who had access to see
Well, Bob
into.
Oxler
Yeah.
got him on phone and interviewed him and got him to admit stuff about the legacy program.
Mm,
It's an audio tape you can find online where he asked Bobby, "Do you think the craft will ever come out so it can be in the hands of open scientists and they can do the work in Yoga?" He says, I really hope so. I don't see it right now." I mean, it was clear he was intimately knowledgeable and involved in the legacy program. When he found out that he had been fooled by this guy, the guy was approached by, let's call them men in black. It was security people that threatened him.
So I was able to contact him thanks to a contact through Admiral Lord Hill Norton here in the UK. And this conversation, he alarmingly not only indicated that these issues were covered under national secrecy laws, but that the United States government did in fact have possession of the hardware associated with this. In other words, this was an actual physical phenomenon. As
a craft, a spaceship.
Several of them, and they were in operational condition, which I assume suggested that they had been in contact, that they had been given these craft for some reason or another, because they certainly weren't crashed vehicles.
Do you anticipate that any of the recovered vehicles would ever become available for technological research outside of the military circles?
Again, I honestly don't know. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
Whether in time has evolved, they're beginning to become more open on it, is a possibility.
A short time later, Bob Exler received this call.
Mr. Eckler, this is Tom King in Admiral Inman's office. Yes, you would be breaching confidence and/or violation of the secrecy laws in discussing his involvement in any matter.
Wow. Yeah, and I think Sheehan also to me said personally that Sheehan has been saying, and I think my show might have been the first time he said it, is that there's a group that people are not aware of that is pushing for disclosure from behind the scenes, and it's not Lou Elizondo, and it's not Chris Mellon, and it's whatever. And he was calling this group of people the Association, and he named Bobby Ray Inman, I believe, as part of that group. I could be getting that confused now, but then he didn't. I don't think he said any other names, but he said a bunch of titles where if you were an enterprising person, you could kind of go down the rabbit hole and infer who some of these people are. So either way, this is the kind of level this guy is on that we're talking about here. I originally asked you the question about the psionic assets, though, and if there was a there within the legacy program. Was this strain that we were just going on leading to that, or is that a separate point?
I met Melinda Leslie,
Okay.
and we became very close friends.
And who is she again?
She's a experiencer that lives in Sedona, Arizona.
Oh, yes.
People out all the time and shows them craft flying through the air over what she believes is a deep underground military base that's right next to a cement factory on Bureau of Land Management land, and the cement factory is owned by Lockheed Martin.
If there is an underground base, which does my head in that they would do it so close to a place like Sedona, why would they locate? Why would they locate a military facility, presumably with very, very sensitive top secret equipment, right next to a major tourist attraction?
Well, first off, I think it was there long before this became a tourist attraction. I think there's evidence that construction was going on this facility back in the 50s before this place was known. It was really in the early 80s that this became a go-to place. It's considered Mecca for New Agers.
So she sees stuff flying in and out of there all the time, coming out of the ground, going back to the ground. So she believes it's a deep underground military base. But she's had multiple experiences: hybrid children, MILABs, military abductions in concert with non-human intelligences. And she was asked to put her hand on equipment and see if she could control it, and she could. So she is one of those that can lay their hand on the skin of the craft and it will fly. I mean, this tells you a lot about how they're controlling it. They're controlling their craft mentally.
Yeah, and this is one of these things that you hear that is potentially one of the bottlenecks of crash retrieval, if indeed that is a thing. Is that, and I don't remember if this was might have been something in a Peter Levenda book, or maybe I just heard about it around the same time. But it was a really well put phrase, which was something to the effect of, the real difficulty isn't reverse engineering the technology; it's reverse engineering the pilots. Or something to that effect, meaning even if you did understand whatever this mysterious object is, you don't understand how to fly it, but it does seem to have something to do with psi, consciousness, telepathy, something like that.
I think Bob Lazar has misinterpreted the sport model. So I think what has going on with this reactor and these amplifiers he has in the bottom is it's taking their mental abilities and with microwaves communicating it into the skin. So I believe mentally controlling things, they animate the craft by a mental connection to stuff that will use whatever energy source it uses to propel it by a method that's unknown to us at all. And so we are so behind that. I don't know how we'll ever do it. Because how do you connect a person's mind to the skin of a craft? You can't even figure out how it works. I mean,
Yeah.
it's clear why they can't do it, and they're never going to do it as long as they only let 2 people look at it. You need hundreds and thousands of people looking at it to make progress. It needs to be done out in the open.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, maybe that's one of the reasons for this push for disclosure. I don't know. I mean, like there are two major questions I'm really curious to get your thoughts on is one, how organized and real is this legacy program? Or is it just a bunch of scattered efforts on the part of different.
I think that I think there is a structure,
Okay.
but it's a structure where everybody on that branch doesn't even know there is another branch. And so the organization happens at the top, and a handful of people kind of know everything. But this is extremely inefficient. It's just not, I mean, I'm just used to, hey, I want to talk, talk to you. I'm just going to pick up the phone and call you. Well, they can't do that if they're in different, we're in different screens. So we'd have different security rules, different security officers, sworn an oath to lie about it, about everything that went on inside there if somebody asked us about it. I mean, if I was in a waived unacknowledged special access program and you have asked me some of the questions you've asked me, I would be required by the non-disclosure agreement to tell you a lie.
Have you told me any lies
I mean,
today?
they maintain secrecy with lying, and it's mandated by their agreements.
I know you can't maybe tell me all the truths, but have you told me any lies, Bob?
No.
Good to know. Good to know.
I have been in waived unacknowledged special access programs, so I speak from experience, but I have not been in any program dealing with legacy or these craft.
Yeah. That said, you do kind of have a unique knowledge of the inner workings of these things, and you don't really have to guess at how they do things from an operational standpoint because you have been on the inside and you have seen the way these waived unacknowledged special access programs
Well,
or
I
these
just want you to
WUSAPs
understand,
work.
most of my information comes from scientific curiosity, intuition, and inference from what experiencers have told me. Not scientists, not government. Experiencers are telling me what they're seeing, and I'm trying to interpret it, given that I am now an experiencer myself.
Well, let's get into that. What has that entailed exactly? Other than what you've already shared.
After the Bledsoe incident and so forth, I moved to Harbor de Grace after leaving Alabama, Maryland, and I began seeing craft in the sky and little cheap cameras all the time. I have hundreds of photos and videos. But the penultimate event, not the biggest one, but the penultimate event was several foot tall entity walked across my backyard and stood in front of me, and I took a picture of it, which people can see. I don't mind showing it. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, actually, you should be able to.
Okay, just I'll keep talking. So what it did is it had something to. I need to go. Okay, I need to open another tab. I'll be right here. I'm not going anywhere. Okay. So and it interacted with me telepathically. And it wanted me to agree to help with soft disclosure by doing exactly the kinds of things I'm doing now. Do this technical work, talk about my experiences and so forth and so on. And but they claimed that they were free will mandated free will kind of philosophy and ethics. So you had to agree to help them do things as they wished. So let me see. Let's start with some
Mhm.
craft, a being, and some craft. So I'm going to do this. Hang on just one second.
Yep.
Let me share the screen. If this is not on your plan, we can stop.
Y-
But
Yeah,
anyway,
no, we can. I edit after the fact, so I can,
okay.
I can clean up the transitions and stuff.
All right. So
And
you are
but
seeing this. So this is the place I live back here on the horizon, and these are beings of some type floating in the sky across my truck, and you can see the stars in the sky, so it's dark. So I think this is a streak because you can see these stars, and you can see other streaks up here, and I'm not illuminating.
mhm.
Okay, so I don't know what this is, but let's just keep going because it
What
gets more.
were you seeing stuff with your naked eye there,
Oh yeah,
or
oh yeah,
and
yeah.
what did it look like to your
Look,
naked
it
eye?
looked like little bright stripes. Okay,
Okay.
this is a craft that I got with a security camera where I saw a flash in the sky. I grabbed a frame and zoomed it. It's not particularly impressive. I'm just telling you, this is one of the things I got, and it looks like some kind of craft.
Hmm.
This one's a little more interesting. This was at a flash. When I zoomed in on the flash, I saw this. And this part is illuminated and this part is in shadow. And it was like late at night. So from all of that, I inferred how high above the earth it was because this is in sun and back here is not. So from the geometry, I could figure out it was about 120 kilometers above the earth. That thing is huge. And this is it later from another angle, same thing, but turned 90 degrees. And right here is a triangle
And how are you capturing these?
with an automated security camera.
Okay.
And I don't know what, but here's one of the things I see, just crazy. And here we are back again, another night catching these things. Okay, let me do this. Let me go back and find the being. Let's get you to the bottom line here.
Yeah, it's so from the images, it's so hard to appreciate because there's, when you have a slow
Ah,
shutter speed at night, it can cause streaks. So
yeah,
I don't know what you saw with your while you were there.
there's no streak on this.
Right.
Yeah, this is my regular visiting reconnaissance craft that's around me nearly all the time. This was one time when I got it stationary 150 to 200 meters away across the top to the south across the top of my neighbor's home. What it is, I don't know. I
Did it
can't.
look like this shape
Oh yeah.
to you?
Oh yeah. No. Remember, it's an automated camera.
Yeah.
I got a video.
Oh, so you didn't see that. Okay, gotcha.
I got a video, but I noticed it was bright and hanging in the video. So I looked at the frames, and this is what it is. Now that I think of it, I should go take this video and stack those frames to
Mhm.
increase the resolution, but I haven't done that. So I can't claim it's done because I've forgotten to do it. But now I know a whole lot more about stacking. Let me see. I'm trying to find this being. Here we go. That's it. Walked up on me in my yard. And that's an eye. That's an eye. There's its nose in the light, and there's its nose in the shadow. Here's its head and chin. About that outline right there is the head. So just let me zoom in a little more. And I don't know if this helps at all, but look, eye, nose, chin, and what looks like a tiny little mouth. So all I knew is I picked up my Canon EOS RA, which is an extremely expensive camera with an extremely expensive lens. And it has IR sensitivity because it's an RA. It's intended for astronomical use. And when I took the picture, I looked, and this was in the frame.
Hmm.
I could see a little glow with my eye, but this came through with IR.
And you said it was walking, or were you just
No,
figuratively?
I heard it walking.
Okay.
I could hear the grass being walked on.
So it seems like What is your assessment of this thing?
It was some being that wanted me to do something since it talked to me telepathically.
Wild. So what were you seeing anything, or you just this
Yeah,
is
no, I could
okay?
see some of this, but it was shimmery and hard to see. But the
Hmm.
camera caught a good image.
So what do you think this thing could possibly be?
Some non-human intelligence that appeared in my yard through a portal.
Wow, man, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's just I see what you're saying. I see this potential face shape, but that's yeah, that's just so wild.
Well, I mean,
That's just so.
but look,
Did you?
the only reason I go where I go is it talked to me telepathically and told me what it was and what it wanted.
And what was it about this request that resonated and made you want to
Oh,
follow
yeah,
through?
that's easy. So I had already visited Chris Bledsoe.
Yeah.
I was already extremely curious, and it wanted me to pick up the pace, so I did.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess I probably would too if I felt did was there any subjective sense of like benevolence or energy that you picked up, or was it just
Yeah,
like
yeah.
more of a
It said that it was a free will absolutist, and that it would only work with me if I was willing. And I sat around and thought about it for a few days. It told me I had until Friday, let's say on it was on a Monday. I had until Friday to decide. That's not right, but you get the picture for that way.
uh-huh.
And I wrote down a list of things it could and could not do. And I said, if I agree to these circumstances, I will do the work you want me to do. And it agreed almost instantly in my head.
Hmm.
And then after that, the floodgate opened, and all those pictures of all those beings and craft and other stuff. And the trajectory of my life through this stuff has just been, I mean, 3 years after that, I'm on Danny Jones with
Yeah.
750,000 views.
Hmm.
And that's not where I started. I was interviewed by Grant Cameron for the first time ever, and maybe 100 people saw it. People have gone back now and looked. But that was a remarkable interview because that's where we talked about him going to Chris Bledsoe's and seeing the dog bleed and Chris heal it. And
Yeah.
he says, I still have the blue jeans in my closet.
Wow. Wild. Wild. You didn't show that picture on Danny Jones, did you?
No,
Oh. Well, I don't know if it's an exclusive, but yeah, I'm curious
no,
to
it's
see.
not. I've shown it
Okay.
elsewhere.
Okay. Okay.
I've
Okay.
shown. No, it's not exclusive, and anybody can go to my Facebook page and download that entire album.
The other frontier of all of this, um, uh, is expanding the sort of horizon and not just expanding the horizon, but expanding our sophistication of how we can think about all of this stuff. And someone that you and I are mutually a fan of, I think is doing this in a way that really no one else is Dr. Donald Hoffman. We were talking about him a little bit before we started recording, and he's just one of kind of like yourself, is one of the few people with a really rigorous academic background who's really trying to push forward our not just our understanding of this stuff from a subjective or philosophical standpoint, but is trying to formalize and create, peer-reviewed science around how we can think about consciousness, and then how not only can we think about consciousness from a more formal mathematical perspective, but everything downstream of that, derive physics from it, potentially create new technologies from it. And I didn't even know this until you and I were speaking at Contact in the Desert. But not only are you also interested in Don's work, but you're kind of getting involved, it sounds like. So yeah, what do you think the significance of Don is, and what is your role going forward in
I
his
can
work?
tell you, he captured my imagination from the first time I saw him on a video. I was just absolutely captivated. And then I went and read his paper about we don't perceive reality, we perceive an illusion. And I'm a mathematician. I have done game theory for the intelligence community. So he had a game theory of evolution proof that if a collection of beings in one group perceive reality they are selected against by evolution because there's too much information flowing. But if the perceptual system is optimized in a way that the things you perceive are there to optimize your survival and prolong the lifetime of your species, then what do you got? You have natural selection, selecting against those who perceive reality and selecting for those who sees reality as something that's guiding them toward a better outcome. That's evolution, and it means we don't see reality. We see
Right.
what our perceptual system makes of it, and that means we live in an illusion.
Yeah.
Illusion given to us by our perceptual system, which we got from our evolution.
Yeah, very well said. This idea that it's actually maladaptive to see reality as it is.
Yes, too much information.
There's a simple phrase that he uses, and it's like escaping me now, but it's like fitness over something, like fitness over reality, essentially meaning like what we need is an interface that will increase our fitness to survive in this realm, not perceive reality.
We
And
definitely want to optimize the fitness function in the game we're playing with evolution. And so it just means we don't we live in an illusion. I mean, you can construct these examples nonstop. The vase, where you see two faces or a vase.
Yeah.
There you go. We live in an illusion. Your perceptual system can make it a vase or two faces.
Right.
And those are kind of proofs he has in his book that's what led him to these things. Then he got sick. He almost died of COVID. He recovered, and then he began really working hard. And he got these conscious agents in a set that he attributed dynamics to, which are Markov. And he adorns them with other things that describe them. So those are called decorated permutations. So he has a collection of conscious agents, which is a permutation, and things that adorn it, which is more metadata about them, and then a way to evolve them in time. And from that mathematical description, he has been able to derive special relativity. That is a paper that's peer-reviewed and published. And so what does that tell you? Consciousness is fundamental, since you can derive special relativity from it.
Right. And he wants to go on to derive basically all of, like, you said the next step is sort of general relativity.
So that's my step.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
struggling through a research program right now to extend his results from special relativity to general relativity.
I'm not going to be able to understand the technicals, and neither will 99.99% of the audience. But what is like the high level process that you're trying to do here through the math?
So you're trying to take this collection of dynamical juggling things, and from this dynamical juggling things, something organizes it. It's a self-organizing thing. And when you get down here at the bottom, you self-organize it. You can find what's called a one-to-one onto mapping between this collection of jumbling things back here and the theory of special relativity over here. So there's a mathematical function that takes this jumble, and out of it comes special relativity. I'm trying to find the jumble that comes down from this cloud over here down to this jumble that I can write a function for that gives me general relativity. Same thing with quantum field theory. I'm just trying to do it one at a time. I would want to make progress.
Yeah.
And I'll use any tool I can. I'll use Claude. I'll use my mind. I'll use other people's work. I don't care what it is, because I'm not in it for me. I want to know how to describe a reality in a better way.
Yeah.
And the result of his consciousness work is that consciousness agents with decorated permutations. One of the lemmas that come from all of that is universal consciousness is required.
Right.
It's required in by his construct. the set of hypotheses and the set of behaviors on his collection of stuff says there is a universal consciousness orchestrating all of it because of the way the Markov processes have to act and how they have to interact.
Yeah. And one of the things I just absolutely love about this is one of my big loves is Western esotericism, you know, the work of the Neoplatonists and Hermeticists and stuff like that. And what's so incredible is what Don is saying is essentially a mathematically formalized version of what all of these mystics were saying. That we're essentially the truth of us is some kind of unified consciousness that somehow differentiates itself into, you know, myriad different forms on multiple different planes of reality.
So
And
in Don's world, you have this collection of
yeah.
stuff,
Hmm.
and you're down here.
Right.
It's a mathematical projection
Yes.
down to a smaller number of degrees of freedom or dimensions.
Yes.
From up here, down here is a projection. And so you're like, up here is all the frames in a movie, and you're down here being looked at one frame at a time.
Yes, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, yeah. And these mystics say the exact same thing. And what I love about Don is he has both the epistemic humility to say, I think I'm wrong. I think this is not going to be, you know, I'm going to probably be proved wrong. We're going to find problems with it. But he also thinks it's going to lead closer to the truth. And he's also open to the idea that these mystics were also right in their own way, but that we need to evolve what they were saying into a more formalized, scientifically explorable form so that we can understand with better granularity and then also potentially create technologies off of this new understanding. And that's where my mind just starts going crazy with potential.
I want to
Yeah,
give you a view of you and your audience a view of this that I think is helpful.
please.
So you have this jumble of stuff up here. You pour in energy to build something out of it. Okay. But once it no longer is animated by the universal consciousness, it begins to decay and become random, and entropy destroys it. So, this is the organization of the universal consciousness where it's taken its attention off that object and it goes back to being part of the set to be reassembled again.
Hmm.
And you see it all the time in our world. Things live, die, decay, and are reborn in a different form. And to me, this is the best way to view the entire thing going back and forth between Don's view of this and how we are down here.
Yeah.
It's a constant flow back and forth, but you can't go back without falling apart
Yeah.
because you're
Yeah.
going back to the jumble.
Yes. Yeah, the Neoplatonists call it the law of precession and return. That there's this, so they have this this emanationist metaphysics where there's this fundamental oneness that everything is, you know, emanating outward from.
The
And
strongest argument I
yeah,
can make that there is a universal free energy is this takes energy, but you can give back. You still have the energy left to do it again.
hmm,
That's because this going back, there's a loss of information. Entropy, you have a certain number of bits of entropy coming down. They fall apart. Those entropy are not preserved. They are lost. So something is feeding new energy into the system. I think that's the free energy source of the universe.
hmm.
Eventually, we're going to figure out how to tap in it and use it.
How do you think about that? Do you think in terms of ether? Do you think in terms of, you know, because we say things like 0 point energy, but that's like conceptual. Do you have any
No,
sense of like what that
that's
would mean?
measurable. We
Okay.
don't know. We don't have a philosophy for
Yes.
it. We can measure it, but we don't know what it is. Don't know how it arises. Don't know where it comes from. We don't even have the right ontology to deal with it.
Yes. That I fundamentally agree with. That's kind of one of the things my talk at Contact in the Desert was about, is that I was jumping off of a lot of these ancient mystical traditions, again, primarily Neoplatonism. But that was one of my core points, is that if you're coming at this question of the phenomenon from a physicalist point of
Wrong
view,
ontology.
it's just
Just
not going to
wrong.
work.
It's
And,
not
and
going to work.
and that's what's so beautiful about Don's work and these ancient ways of looking at reality is well, again, they both assume that we are multidimensional beings and that whatever this is, this projection that you were just talking about, is not the fundamental reality in the same way Wheeler was talking about, that there is some higher truth that we're all emanating from. And that higher truth is either is consciousness, or is it a deeper level of reality that has um, wider access to consciousness in a way that we don't understand or we don't have access to down here, or at
Okay,
least
so
we're
I'm
not
I'm
conscious
gonna
of it.
I'm gonna give you something that's just gonna put a little bug in your mind.
Yeah.
As we get closer and closer to the base reality, things become random. You get the Schrodinger uncertainty principle and 0 point energy and things created out of the vacuum and all this other stuff. So, what this says to me is the universal consciousness is a set of things. It does not have a topology.
Mm-hmm.
But when we run it through this projection, there's loss of information as you come down through this projection. And from that, we get the loss of information as this projection happens, is what causes our perception of the flow of time. And
Mm.
the cross sectional area of this projection is what determines the number of dimensions there are in our reality.
Whoa. So if I'm hearing you correctly, the loss of information is actually kind of what gives structure because it's
Yes.
constricting.
Yes,
Wow, that's a really crazy way to think about it, but that totally makes sense.
it does. And it's just, I'm struggling to find the math to prove it. I know
Yeah,
it. It's I get downloads, and this is a download. I know it's right. I'm just going to struggle to find it.
yeah. I think that is another fundamentally wrong intellectual posture we have. I think we think of things as being what they are through like some kind of gaining of information, right? It's like for instance, thinking like if you think consciousness is epiphenomenal of the brain, that's somehow being produced from more, right? It's more, but really, I think you're right. I think it's the opposite. I think all of these things are gradations of degeneration from that natural state of oneness.
I have a friend, female friend, and she was married to a man that she loved very much, and he passed away from cancer. And later on, he visited her when she was in a new situation, and told her it was all right to go on with her life. This tells you just we don't have things right.
Yeah,
Everybody should go look at Leslie Kane's Surviving Death series on Netflix.
yeah,
That's the end of your belief in the physical materialist world. The things that you see in that series are impossible in a physically materialist world in which we are trapped in our time. What I believe is time is on a circle and we experience it all at once if we got up to a high enough level.
hmm,
And time is actually meaningless. Remember, I said the loss of information is what causes the flow of time. And so I just think it's meaningless once we get back close enough to the universal consciousness. Your
yeah,
own personality, you're a fragment of the universal consciousness. You might overlap with 10 other people. And so all of you are close together. You communicate with each other just by that closeness. And that means your vertices on the correct graph near each
hmm,
other. There's a small number of edges between you and another person you're connected with.
yeah,
That means you're a part of the universal consciousness. They're a part of the universal consciousness. The more edges you share, or the less number of edges between you and them, the more likely you are to have a deep connection with them.
yeah, yeah. That makes perfect sense. I talked to Eric Wargo a while ago on the show, who wrote this book, Time Loops, which deals heavily with retrocausality. And, he talks a lot about remote viewing. He talks a lot about premonitions, precognition, also, just really interesting cases of people, writing books in like the 1950s or something. And then the exact thing they wrote about in the 50s ends up happening in the 90s. And there's a, consistent paper trail. One of the weird ones is there's like I don't know if he talks about this one actually, but have you seen the one, oh man, it's like Baron Trump's Adventures or whatever, and he has and there's a character named Don as well in the book who's like his, I think it's his father. It's like literally Baron Trump who really exists now, and his father Don. Like there's all of these crazy examples of stuff just like this that are right there in history to be seen, that are impossible to dismiss as coincidence, I think, particularly taken in totality. But the thing that always threw me off about Eric, even though I think he's brilliant, is he attributes this retrocausality to sort of a block universe view of things,
I do
meaning
not believe in the block universe. I
but
believe all of the universe is in slices. I believe
yes.
jumble of crap that look like a set that when projected onto us, the pieces flow down, get
Mhm.
crushed into something small. That's a projection.
Yeah.
Block universe is just, look, we know from relativity that if I'm at this point in space time and you're over at this point in space time, we will not agree on the order in which things occur.
Yeah.
Wigner has an experiment. A quantum object is in a box. I stand back over here and I look through this window. You stand over here and you look through that window. We both will see the quantum object wave function collapse. This one will not see the same thing as this one a high percentage of the time. Yet they're looking at the same quantum object. They
Mm.
see different things. And so how do you reconcile that with this physical materialist view of the world? It doesn't
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Wigner's right. Wheeler's right. You cannot believe how much Wheeler would stomp on retrocausality is the quantum erasure. And he is the inventor of the quantum
Mm.
erasure.
Wow, good point. So for in case I didn't connect all these dots for people listening, he believes that due to this block universe, that essentially there is no like it's determinist. Like there is no free will. The reason you can have retrocausation is because that information already exists in the future, and you're getting this information essentially traveling backwards in time, and that's how you're able to have this premonition. But then that completely nullifies free will, and he thinks that we're like this weird you know time worm or something that already exists fully formed in time, but we're just experiencing our life going forward sequentially, but there is no free will, there
Okay,
is no
so
actual yeah.
people that experience the universal consciousness, in some manner, they always talk about how feel they're enveloped in unconditional love.
Mhm.
And if that is the creator of our universe, they can't create a block universe. And the reason they can't create a block universe is that would make them the author of all evil.
Right.
It's really hard to take.
Yeah.
My father was a minister. Do you think I believe God is the author of all evil? What is the purpose in being a Christian? What is the purpose in begging for forgiveness?
Yeah.
I just can't. I can't take Presbyterianism and there's no free will and you're predetermined. That makes God the author of sin. Either you believe in love and God or you don't.
Yeah. How has your view of that actually changed since you started interacting with this realm? Has your idea of
It's
what God
grown. It's
yeah.
grown into being more than the God my father knew.
Yeah.
It's bigger. But I experienced the Holy Spirit in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre during a really, really weird event.
Hmm.
So,
Tell me more.
I was over doing an intelligence operation in Israel and it was not fun. So I decided at the end of it to take a little time off and I went up to the Church of the Nativity, down to the Garden of Gethsemane, decided to walk from the Garden of Gethsemane along the path Christ took through the eastern gates of Jerusalem to Golgotha, where he was ultimately crucified. That is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. I went in there and I couldn't get near what was sensibly was Christ's tomb because um, the Greek Orthodox had their hand out for you to pay money to look where Christ laid. Before he was resurrected, so I just really got off of me. So I started wandering around because I knew this system of places where lots of tombs, which are just holes in a rock, were around. So I just wanted to see what one of them looked like. So I got in this room with a bunch of other people, and we were all in there. And all of a sudden, all the sound was gone. And you could hear what looked like wind, but you couldn't feel wind, you could just hear it. And pretty soon, I don't know, it seemed like forever. It was probably a few seconds. I could hear in my head, Rock of Ages, which, of course, being a minister's son, I knew exactly what it meant. So I felt the urge to sing Rock of Ages. So I began singing the hymn Rock of Ages. And every person in that room, in their own language, began singing Rock of Ages with me. I left there changed.
Wow. It's very profound, my friend. Yeah, I mean, it's those moments are indescribable, where you can just feel, the mysterium tremendum there in a way that's like impossible to describe. But I've had
Who,
moments like that too.
who am I to describe God? Who am I?
Yeah,
I
right.
just know what I feel.
Well, you did more to describe it in your emotional reaction, I think, than you could have said in any words. Yeah, I know that exact feeling of awe that touched you there, and it's unbelievably profound. And yeah, I think I think to use Donald Hoffman terms, I think that that's the moment where our qualia kernel stretches to its limit or something. Like we don't have whatever we need to fully understand that, but that's what it feels like when something of a higher order interacts with us, with
We
interacts with
we
our
we
limited
we are
scope.
having we're the universal consciousness is shoving qualia down our projection that we have never seen before and have no idea how to interpret.
Yeah. Well said, my friend. This has been such a fantastic, wide-ranging conversation. Before we wrap, though, are there any stories you want to share? Any things you think I should have asked you that I didn't ask you?
Oh, let's see. I found a woman on a dating site for old people. She found me on dating site for old people. We had conditions on how they could interact. She was outside my parameters. I was outside her parameters, but it put us together anyway. And so we began talking, and it was clear that she did not want to be with me. I was too far away, and she couldn't see me enough to realize whether she was determined to find the right man.
Mhm.
And so it was too far away to be seen often enough to determine quickly whether or not I was the right guy. She's very organized, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it was hard for her to see how it would work. I just felt the connection. So I says, "Look, I'll just drive up." She says, "Okay, you got to drive up and you got to stay 2 nights every weekend. You can get a hotel and we'll have dates." So I went up and visited, and when I saw her, I felt like I knew her before. We got to the dinner table and I touched her hand and we had shared consciousness. And I'm marrying her tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
That was 5
Congratulations.
weeks ago.
Wow. That's amazing. That's so cool. Man, beautiful stuff, my friend. That's such a beautiful note to end this on. Is there anything that people can check out of yours, or are you just out here doing your freewheeling thing that you don't need to
No,
point
so
anybody
I'm
toward?
just right now, I'm publishing a book, very, very technical book that nobody in your audience will care about on modern computational nonlinear filtering. It is used in the passive radar and other systems that I will be putting out there to help people follow, track, and classify their UAP and their USOs. So that is a technical book. I'm writing Angela Ford's biography with her permission. It's an authorized biography, and we're working on it together. And I'm about to spring on the world. Um, an experiment that I believe will show there's a breakdown in what we believe about gravity and quantum field theory. And it's based off knowledge I gained while doing Hawkeye 360. That's as far as I'll go, because we're still planning to do it, and we'll just see how it goes and hope it's right, because I think it's indicative of a new version of whatever reality we're living in, how to describe it. But I think it explains all the weird rotational the things that happen, eliminates dark energy and dark matter, and all of a sudden, almost everything looks like Newton when looked at the right way.
Whoa. That's profound. It
So
sounds like something I won't be able to.
there's a new symmetry that if you go from that condition to this condition, the symmetry says what Newton did over here now works over here. If you go through the mapping to go from this condition to that condition, that
Whoa.
Newton's kind of stuff still works.
So reality might get more simple rather than more complex and needing to continuously bolt on.
The greatest ideas of every genius that ever lived seem simple once they're discovered. I believe the universe is simple. We're looking at it the wrong way.
That completely makes sense.
And so that happened when Einstein took Newton. He had information that didn't fit with Newton, but he did the wrong thing with it. But he got a thing that worked, but it was the wrong thing. I think this experiment is going to reveal information that will allow us to figure out what really works.
Yeah. I would ask you to elaborate, but I don't think I would understand.
It's very, very difficult, complicated, and mathematical. And right now I'm not talking about it openly because I'm trying to get it funded.
Yeah. Well, you're such an interesting man. Thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for being vulnerable as well, because I think that speaks volumes about the level to which this stuff has impacted you. And, that you really are this multi-dimensional truth seeker I wish there were more of. I wish there were more of. So thanks for what you're doing. And thanks for hanging out with me, my friend.
It's been very nice being here. I hope your audience gets something out of it.